7 o'clock, Sunday night. Let's get to it. It's Topical starts right now. A very good evening to you, South Africa, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. Going to do things slightly different tonight. The optics will be different, but the content will hopefully still be riveting. Similar to what we saw earlier this week, right? We saw Julius Malema in a different light, crestfallen, downhearted. Then the riveting content, his longtime ally and Deputy Floyd Shivambu resigning, saying he's joining Jacob Zuma's MK party. Malema comparing Shivambu's departure to the grief he felt when his mother died. A powerful and significant moment. How did we get to this point? How consequential will this move be in the greater scheme of things? Is this a major shakeup of the political landscape in South Africa, or just a tremor? We have gathered some of the best minds in the business for perspective on the political state of play. Stand by for their comments. Which leads us to the question of the week. And we're asking you, what do you think of Floyd Chibambu's resignation from the EFF will mean for the party itself, but not only the party, but also South Africa's political landscape? Let us know at SABC News_TV. Perspective coming up. So, did you see this coming? The resignation of Floyd Chibambu from the EFF, the party he co-founded. He was such a strong proponent of the party, from defending party leader Julius Malema and using biblical references to challenge alleged wrongdoing by those in charge of the country's vital institutions. Producer Makeketla Motlabe reminds us about some of the political jabs Shivambu threw in and out of Parliament until now.
ANC clique no longer exists. Mama, when you questioned against that do not discontinue this youth league, a fighting generation in the Congress movement.
The DA is questioned officially that don't engage in self-destructive activities and programs.
Jacob Zuma should be removed as a president of South Africa because he's no longer suitable to continue as president. He has caused our country so much harm, we cannot sustain him in office.
Salim Isap and Bich Gupta, Tony Gupta, were not at my house.
Last time I checked, Exodus 20 verse 7 says that thou shalt not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him or her guiltless.
And some of you in red overalls there were probably working on Malema's farm. We were very busy.
Order,
The point
Chair.
of order, Ndate Shivambu.
The honorable member who's speaking must consistently and reliably refer to the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF as Honorable Malema, please.
I'm sure the Honorable Minister has heard the Honorable Member reminding us all to be honorable in the House.
Yes.
Honorable Shivambu.
I guess that the uninspiring speeches and reputations of the ANC are somehow reflective of the organization itself. A post-centenarian organization, post-100 years organization, which has got signs of people who are above the age of 100.
The former President de Klerk has been invited.
Honorable Speaker, you can't recognize de Klerk as a president of what?
There is an issue which the Reserve Bank sought clarity from him on in relation to the money that is in Palapal.
No, Honorable Shivambu, please take your seat. Please take your seat.
He has ignored that currently.
I now suspend the proceedings. I now suspend the proceedings.
For expropriation of land without compensation charge. Long live the economic freedom fighters, long live.
I've decided not to renew the membership of the EFF because I will join and participate in Umkhonto Wesizwe party.
When he sent me a letter, I felt the same pain when I received the news of the passing away of my mother. Because Floyd, to me, is not just a comrade, he's a brother. And he will remain a brother even when he pursues his political career differently.
So you got a sense of what we're going to be talking about tonight. A full house tonight. The gang's all here to help me unpack some of the pertinent political moves that we've seen of late. We have SABC News acting political editor Ntebo Mokobo. We also have SABC News senior political reporter Samkele Maseko, senior political journalist from Sunday World, Mawande Amashabalala, as well as we have political analyst Sandile, Swana, and Dr. Fikile Vilakazi joining us virtually. Welcome, everyone. Let's maybe start off with you, Samkele. The optics. Let's talk about the optics of being there, witnessing a person that is leaving a party with his now former leader sitting beside him and everything, and taking questions afterwards. Have you seen that happen before? What was the read in the room?
The truth of the matter is that there was a show that was put on to put on a facade of this unity breakup. This was a nasty, messy breakup that had to be managed in order for the fallout not to be spectacular on social media, on newspapers, and also for their dirty linen not to be laid out to the public domain. Amashabalala here covered them extensively when it came to the issues of Mahuna Investments and Skameka that involved their restaurant in Soweto suit, and how monies were seemingly being funneled from the VBS Mutual Bank into these two vehicles that were used by Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu. They are tied to the hip. They're as thick as thieves when it comes to their political and economic shenanigans that are intertwined together. But the truth of the matter is the fallout between the two started before the second NPA of the EFF back in 2019. You'd remember at the time there was a caucus or a faction being formed of the likes of Mandisa Mashiho, Dalimpofu, Fana Mukwena. In the province of Gauteng, you had the likes of Musa Novela, rather, in Johannesburg, Mo Africa, in Tshwane, and the predecessors of Dunga. Floyd Shivambu had a faction in the EFF, which in the second NPA, just a month before, they then clinched a deal with Julius Malema to come back together. And ultimately, that is where you saw the other officials of the EFF, which became a negotiated settlement, like Popi Molwailela, the Deputy Secretary General, who was brought into the officials of the EFF by Floyd Shivambu, like Veronica Mente, the National Chairperson, brought into the fore by Floyd Shivambu. Julius Malema brought in Marshal Dlamini and brought in Ompilo Moato, who is the Treasurer General of the party. So they both had 2-2 in the officials in order to mark one another on the policy and economic trajectory and governance trajectory of the party.
What's the talk, Mawande? If you take into consideration what Samkele is saying, was that what we saw, that display, effective?
No. It was not effective. In fact,
Blaine, if subsequently to that, I think a day or two after that, there were attempts within the EFF to plant stories that this is a strategy to take over the MK, which, by the way, began on the day itself, that this is some tactical conspiracy to take over MK by EFF. These people didn't fight. But just yesterday, I think I saw Samkele even posted it on his WhatsApp, where the leader of the student command was taking shots. You can see sub-tweets on Twitter by some elements of the EFF leadership that are beginning to accept this thing and are beginning to attack Mr. Floyd Shivambu for the decision that he has taken. So it was, in my view, a failed attempt at managing PR and the fallout, as it were.
Ntebo, has the reasons for Floyd Shivambu leaving become any clearer since Thursday?
Well, good evening, Blaine, and good evening to the viewers at home. There hasn't been any substantive reason really given in terms of what led to, what broke the camel's back. The only thing that we hear is that he's going to the MK party and he's going there to help resuscitate the party. You would recall that at some point they were talking about the expelled Secretary General. So some people are seeing him as someone who's going to come in and become the brains trust, as some people would want to suggest, that he's going to resuscitate the party and give it its direction in terms of policy formulation and articulation, because this is a new party, the MK party. There hasn't been anything really said about its policy. There hasn't been something really said about its strategy when it comes to governance.
Right.
So there hasn't been any reason really what led to him leaving the party.
Sam?
But Ntebo, we must be clearer on the issue of the relationships. As Mawande, you would know, the breakdown in the relationship started especially at a time when the EFF gained access to the coffers of the state back in 2016, when Floyd Shivambu had to chair the governance portfolio of the party. Post the 2021 general elections, also chairing the governance portfolio, you look at the shenanigans in municipalities such as Swana, such as Ekurhuleni, where Floyd Shivambu was deployed, and the friction that was there between Mr. Shivambu and the likes of Nkululeko Dunga in that region, the friction that was there between Marshal Dlamini and the likes of Nkululeko Dunga. The EFF's problems mainly started emanating when they got access to the levers of power within these particular municipalities after they were dumped by the DA, and they ultimately decided to work with the ANC, which in a way gave them more power than they originally had with the Democratic Alliance. So
you're saying this wasn't a real shock as was conveyed at that press conference?
It wasn't a real shock as it was conveyed at the press conference. The umbilical cord was only broken by, which I say, the person who has basically shattered the opposition parties in the country, which is the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, with the government of national unity, which has pretty much put these political formations into disarray, which has fragmented the progressive caucus on its own. You saw Bantu Holomisa leaving, you saw other political formations leaving the progressive caucus, going for the blue lights, but also to credit the Sunday Times, their story that they had of the actual breakup of Julius Malema and Floyd Shivambu is around the deputy presidency of the country and how Julius Malema was going around and negotiating for himself. Mawande would know of a certain gathering at a certain in a former minister's house where battles broke out within that particular residence between some leaders of the ANC Youth League, the ANC, and Julius Malema, where he was telling them that whether they like it or not, he is the incoming deputy president of the country.
Sandile, Swana, does this mean, or do you see this as a major shift in terms of the political landscape here in South Africa, or just a tremor?
Thank you so much, Blaine. I think that it's an opportunity for the Progressive Caucus, as well as an opportunity for the MK party, particularly to the extent that Floyd Shivambu has declared that he's going there. A lot of us have seen the party struggling to manage itself, people being terminated on unknown and undisclosed codes of conduct, and so on and so forth, and some people even in this show saying that maybe the party has not even produced a proper policy document and so on. So the coming of a person like Floyd Shivambu into MK, which carries the largest number of votes within the Progressive Caucus, then would stabilize that caucus, because if the biggest part of the caucus is unstable and chaotic, it would actually create a problem.
Right.
And there's another leg which still needs to be opened up, which is to create a broad front, some form of mass movement outside of Parliament to complement what they will be doing inside of Parliament. So if we look purely from that perspective and Floyd Shivambu's CV, it is indeed a worthwhile enterprise. I see it as a positive development from their perspective, the perspective of MK and the perspective of the Progressive Caucus.
Dr. Vilakazi, I heard the word revolutionary being used more in this week than I've heard in the past couple of years. Floyd Chibber was saying that his non-renewal of membership of the EFF is not a vote of confidence in the organization, but a revolutionary act. What's your understanding in terms of this meaning? Give us some context.
Blade, good evening to you and to listeners and viewers at home, and to colleagues at the studio, and to Prof. I really think that there is something going on here which is about the revolution and remobilization of the left politics in the country. And I think when the GNU happened, it became a moment really that reminded the politicians of the left about the importance of mobilizing and coming together. And I think this word that Floyd uses is revolutionary, perhaps many other leftists are using, is a signal really of saying there has been an attempt, since the breaking of the ANC into smaller pieces, of trying to resuscitate what the country had known for many, many years as what you would call a revolutionary leftist politics. And of course, that politics has fragmented over time. And it seems to me that what the MK has done in this election of 2024 is seen by many people who really have deep desire to reorganize the politics of the left as something that is probably the way to go, especially because the MK has stolen on some of the votes, very, very critical votes of the EFF and some of the ANC. The cry having been from the ANC itself to the smaller broken parties, including the EFF, being that the ANC original party has compromised on the politics of the left, has compromised on the revolution. People, they're calling it the National Democratic Revolution. And I think that word emanates from that. Whether then the move to Umkhonto we Sizwe is a revolutionary act that is taking us to that place is something that we need to question. And Blade, I would say why I'm saying that. If you look at some of the concerns that people are raising about the leadership of the Commander-in-Chief, Julius Malema, include issues of dictatorship, for instance, power mongering and not really wanting to share power, especially because they were heading towards the conference. But why would you then want to go and join Umkhonto we Sizwe when there are similar concerns around the type of leadership that former President Jacob Zuma is displaying? A lot of people in South Africa are saying this is a cult, is some form of dictatorship. Be that true or false, is something that I think is something that we need to watch and see. But then the question is, if it is about revolutionary left and you still then jump the floor into another possibility of a dictatorship, what kind of a revolution are you waging? What kind of a revolution this is about? So, and then it brings up questions of character, right? Yeah. It brings up questions of saying, could this be about VP? Could this be about the fact that a lot of people that are flocking into the MK are seen to be those people that the country has been calling the revolutionary economic radical transformation economic faction that is linked to scandals and corruption and so on. Perhaps this is something to say, let me rather be with the people who can understand my plight, given the allegations that are waged against Floyd. That's my take on it.
And it also throws up the issue of personality politics as well. We'll get into that in a short while. Mawande, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to jump in on the revolutionary talk. You see, besides the issues that Samkele was talking about, which emanate from EFF now being in power, the personal interest, the self-accumulation that comes with being in power, but also at an ideological level, Mr. Shivambu, for the longest time, who is a communist, He rose through the ranks of the Young Communist League, to the ANC Youth League, ultimately to the EFF, and now MK. But throughout the time, with his personal and political friendship with Julius Malema, he's never believed that Julius Malema means what he says as it relates to socialism and communism. And I think that has been a point of frustration for the longest time for him. And now seeing MK probably as the ultimate party that actually means what they say, revolutionary, in terms of socialism and communism. He never believed that Julius Malema means it. He just believed that he uses socialism and communism to advance his political career and his personal interest.
But what do you mean? Because he likened him to Kwame Nkrumah at the FNB Stadium and Julius Nyerere.
He was singing for his supper. I mean, come on.
Okay.
What do you see, Ntebo, happening from now till the elective conference, crucial elective conference happening in December? What do you see playing out in order for them to effect enough change to make a difference in 2026?
You mean the EFF or
the
the MK party? You see, what they need, I always say, you see, there is this old adage that says there are no eternal enemies in politics. I've seen that there's been a number of submissions that Floyd has left a void in the EFF. You see, if you come to understand and look at the EFF politics, the EFF is formed around Malema's personality. And if you have the Floyd Shivambu leaving, Malema had a strategy that worked for him. And that strategy was to say, I need to dwarf everyone within these top officials. And he has managed to do that. So even if you were to think about anything from the EFF, you would think of Julius Malema. If that man addresses the press briefing, he answers questions. It was very interesting to see Floyd Shivambu when he addresses the EFF press conference. It was when he was leaving the party.
For the first time.
It has never happened. The first time on the podium at the EFF press room was when he was speaking on his resignation letter. To a point where questions were being asked and Julia said, come to the podium. He said, oh, the podium. It was his very first time
not used to.
addressing a press conference on that particular podium. But what we must also contend with is, we must be historical in our analysis of politics. Floyd Shivambu's departure, ideologically, intellectually, it will hollow out the EFF. But the EFF is sound on its rhetoric, on sounding revolutionary left. Because the ultimate truth is that in South Africa, there's no revolutionary left. We have political formations who are broad churches. If the EFF was revolutionary left, they would have capacitated the municipality or the state of Ekurhuleni. They would have abolished tenders as per their manifesto and their cardinal pillars. But they did the opposite. Her tenders were dished out on a more fluent basis. They would have influenced the capacitation of the state within the municipality of Johannesburg. Dr. Mgcini Mchako, to put some respect to it, is trying to do that where he is currently deployed within the city. But it's not at a rapid speed enough because they are still outsourcing security services within the city of Johannesburg. But futuristically and historically, politically, with Floyd Shivambu leaving Julius Malema, this gives an opportunity for the old grouping of 2012 ANC conference in Mangaung, of Paul Mashatile, of Fikile Mbalula, of Julius Malema, to regroup and ultimately say, Julius, you are leading the EFF. Mbalula, you are the Secretary General of the ANC. We had a plan that Mbalula, you will take over after Kgalema Motlanthe and be the president. I, Julius Malema, will then come in as your deputy president. With the negotiations of the GNU, going in the manner that they went and Julius Malema negotiating for himself and leaving Floyd out, ultimately spelled that Julius was looking after his own interest and Fikile Mbalula was looking after his own interest by supporting the GNU and blocking out Julius Malema so that the one first past the Rubicon is the one who becomes the president, because ultimately between this generation of economic freedom fighters, starting from the Youth League and ultimately going to EFF and the Youth League of Julius Malema and Malusi Kigaba, There is generational jealousy of who will become the president of the country first. Malusi Gigaba wants it. Julius Malema wants it. Floyd Shivambu sees an opportunity in the MK party that there is no other leader who has the same national fortitude and exposure in the MK, unlike him at this point in time. Because the truth of the matter is, Dr. Mandla is not a politician. And there is a gap of someone who will anchor the politics of the MK, which then clubs up these political parties in future negotiations of the country.
Sandile, Swana, I'll come back to you, Ntebo. Julius Malema admitted that this is a testing time for the party. The party either passes this test or the party dies. It's that stark. And with more people, as acknowledged by Mr. Malema, leaving the party, how does it survive? How does it possibly regroup now? How worried is Julius Malema on a Sunday night?
Thank you. With or without Floyd Shivambu, and you would have had Floyd Chibber referring to a document, an organizational redesign document of the EFF. I haven't seen the document. But having looked at the results of the election, I can imagine what they should have addressed in that document. The election results indicated that the EFF, there are certain political markets, if we can use such language, where the EFF doesn't have grip. For instance, in KZN, being hammered in the way that they were hammered, not to the same degree as the ANC or the IFP, it showed them that there's a part of the market that they don't have control over. Maybe it's not even their market. It's not even a market they should be contesting. In other parts, I think they were surprised by the success they achieved. So the markets that the first thing they need to do now is to look at the markets that they need to be addressing and not try to take MK head-on in some of these markets or even take the ANC head-on in some of the markets. I think the EFF has got to identify its market. The departure of Floyd Shivambu creates an opportunity for a new, younger leadership, perhaps, that can do the redesign, the organizational redesign, and launch them into a new trajectory. I am not saying that they are going to be as big as MK or as big as the ANC, but they can have a distinct identity that they can perhaps push for going forward.
Ntebo, take us to a break.
Well, I was saying, Blaine, there is this cliche of revolutionary and some politicians are really steeped into sloganeering. You see, if you look at Floyd Shivambu going into the EFF and saying revolutionary or is going to revolutionize the MK party, we need to look beyond the sloganeering. Because if he goes there, it's all about his interest. He has seen an opportunity in the EFF, I mean in the MK that seems like it's in disarray when it comes to stability in terms of leadership. So he has seen himself as someone who can go there and quickly get to the high echelons of the party. And that's exactly what is happening. And that's one thing that has made South Africa to regress a bit over the years. Because politicians, it's all about interest. It's all about selfish interest for them. It's not about really serving the people. It's all about what can I get out of this mess.
Right.
So we are saying in MK, Kimikiti what the cats.
That's yours. That's what we say.
On that note, we need to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to ask the better minds here to look into the crystal ball. Possible positions for Floyd Shivambu in MK. You might have seen the Sunday Times. They saying a few things. We'll bring it up. We'll talk about it. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. We're talking about Floyd Shivambu and his resignation from the EFF, joining the MK party. What are the possible positions? How consequential is this move? Not only for the MK party, not only for the EFF, but for you as society. These politicians are put in there to make a difference in your life. What's the end game? We'll talk about that soon. Samkele, Maseko, a read from your sources in terms of where does Floyd Chibber fit in terms of the MK party. What are you hearing?
Rather interestingly, Floyd Shivambu was in Durban over the weekend. I happened to go home yesterday, so I got some few sources because there was rumors going around that Mtumiseni Ntuli of the ANC, Sihlezi Galala, Njabulo Nzuza, and Mdum Mtaga, and also Mdum Hlongo were meeting former President Jacob Zuma at Vivian Reddy's Hotel in Durban. But they had their own meeting and bumped into Floyd Shivambu, who was there to see former President Jacob Zuma for a meeting. And that just tells you that Floyd's role in the EFF is now being discussed with the former president. But we must also be factual. Floyd Shivambu going to the MK party is the work of Makasela Mzobe, who is his long-term friend from the South African Students' Congress, SASCO, when Floyd was at Wits, when Makasela was the Secretary General of SASCO. They've built a rapport. It is Floyd Shivambu who recruited Linda Sbiya and Makasela to the EFF against the wishes of Marshal Dlamini's supporters in KZN, which saw the obliteration of the EFF within that particular province, which has now planted a view within EFF supporters that Floyd was being used as a Trojan horse by former President Zuma and the MK party to destroy the EFF from within in order to rise of the MK party, to take EFF's votes and give them to the MK, obliterate the IFP, obliterate the ANC. But the truth of the matter is the EFF has never truly had a market in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. They benefited from the tribalistic provinces that are largely and ethnic politics that are associated with that province, where ANC people not ANC, supporters of Jacob Zuma as a persona, going back to that Umfowethu syndrome of the ANC in 2009, where Zuma came into the power for the first time. Those people were voting for the former president. When the former president left office, they no longer had a political home. And they no longer saw Cyril Ramaphosa as an alternative because they perceived them as pursuing or persecuting Jacob Zuma. So Julius Malema became an option for them to vote. But when Jacob Zuma came back to the political fore, his supporters, over 1 million of them in that province of KwaZulu-Natal, 1.5, 1.6 to be precise, that he grew the ANC by, went back to him in the MK party, ditched Julius Malema. But Julius Malema made one mistake. The T in Nkandla was him showing an olive branch and embracing the former president, which then confused his own voters who had dumped Zuma, because he had left the ANC, he was no longer the president, had no other political party. They then went back to Zuma.
Mawande, is Floyd Shivambu seen as a vessel or a way of garnering support from outside of KwaZulu-Natal for the MK party?
Big. I believe, Blaine, at the core of the strategy for MK, as they benefit Floyd into their ranks, is exactly that. I have gathered over time, conversing with people around President Zuma, that among his main frustrations within MK is the perception. They call it a perception. They don't believe that that is the case. The perception that MK party is a Zulu party, is a Zulu nationalist or tribalist party. So it has been, in fact, part of the reason they brought their manifesto, they call it the People's Mandate, into Orlando instead of Moses Mabhida, where everyone else was going, was to shake off that perception of a tribalist or ethnic party. So benefiting someone who is non-Zulu, such as Floyd Shivambu, who also has a political profile and political image that he has, is going to be a huge beneficiation. And in fact, in Limpopo, they've already been making inroads. Floyd Shivambu comes from where Papa Penny, who also joined MK at that big rally at Orlando Stadium, comes from. So you can see that it's in Limpopo and Gauteng particularly, they are going to benefit through Floyd Shivambu outside the Ngunis or Zulu speaking people.
Dr. Vilakazi, the MK managed to garner around, 45% in this elections in KwaZulu-Natal. EFF managed to get just over 2% in that province, and they spent some time campaigning. As you know, they had the manifesto launch in Moses Mabhida Stadium. How do you see, in terms of positions, possible positions? Mr. Shivambu said that nothing has been promised to him. He's going there to make a difference, to change society. How do you see the cards falling in terms of positions?
Blaine, I see Shivambu coming in really in a possible crucial position in Parliament. I think it's definitely going to be deployed into Parliament. But I also think that it's probably going to be brought into the inner circle of what they have as national leadership. I don't think that he will be president because President Jacob Zuma is still there, but is likely to be seen as a successor. So I think that he will be mentored into a possibility of presidential candidate for the 2029 elections. And I think that's what is happening here. Whether that stands in the next 5 years, I think it's something that we need to see. Blaine, I just want to raise the question of principles, really.
Right.
I think that around positions, but also around power and around politics. Look, you will remember there was a time when the women in South Africa, for instance, were marching against the former President Jacob Zuma on the Kwezi matter and rape and all the cases of, I remember vividly how, for instance, people like Julius Malema, Fikile and Floyd Shivambu were saying that they will die for Zuma. But you fast forward that as soon as they got into Parliament, they started saying pay back the money and all the campaigns that the EFF has run. And Floyd himself, I think, was saying some things around President Jacob Zuma, including, Julius Malema. And now Floyd is in the arms of Jacob Zuma. And for me, there's something fundamentally unethical about the manner in which really politicians are doing this dance of politics. And I know we all say that politics is a game of power and selfishness and so on. But at the center of it, there is something that is deeply disturbing, around how politicians negotiate power and share power. Today they say this and tomorrow they say that. And how do you then really expect citizens to trust the political system? And I think for me, that's a question here that is at stake. Is our political system intact, Blaine? There's a campaign going on out there in South Africa as we speak that says we do not have faith in the system because politicians have played this game. Today they are stabbing one another, and tomorrow they come and they sleep in the same bed, they eat in the same pot, and so on. So how do South Africans really get to trust the political system to take us into a place of true freedom, of true democracy in South Africa? And I think the question of Floyd is really not immune to those questions that are facing us. It's a fundamentally deeply question, a question of principles to say, really, is there honesty? Is there honesty in the political system? For me, those are really the issues that are coming up that I think we need to deal with as citizens now that this thing is happening.
We must never forget the bigger picture, right? It always boils down to the voter and what society is going to gain from all these political moves. Dr. Vilakazi, thank you so much for your time. I know you're about to catch a flight. You graciously waited for us. We appreciate your insights. Thank you so much. All right.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Only a pleasure. I want to get your sense now. Let's go to the regular word on the street feature. We took the streets of Johannesburg seeking diverse insight and perspectives on this topic. And this is what you had to say on this matter. Take a look.
This is one of the strategies that are politically of the EFF because number one, EFF and MK are in the Progressive Caucus. So I think in their Progressive Caucus, they might have planned this. They are going to strengthen the opposition so that they can fight the GNU.
Personally, I think this is a downfall for EFF because Floyd Shivambu is an intellectual. So he was something big in the party.
Oh, so no, this is not the beginning of the end, because as much as Floyd might have been Malema's friend, they've been working together, like they've known each other since growing, but him leaving does not mean that this is the end of the EFF.
As a leader of a political party, you can't have it come as a surprise that your vice wants to leave your party, especially the EFF, one that's not very united in my opinion. If the vice can leave, it's only inevitable for the rest to leave.
This is not the beginning of the end because as much as Floyd has left, it doesn't mean the organization has come to an end because the organization is not him and Yena is not the organization. So
honestly speaking, I think Floyd made a wise move in order to pursue his career. Staying with EFF, you will get nowhere. But the attitude Malema has will bring you nowhere.
Very tricky dynamic right now, especially in the political arena. Looking that the EFF is young, and since he's moving also to the MK, it also puts a bit of pressure on our side, because we know that there are some people that were for Floyd, but I think if we just stand on working on the ground and actually building the organization, we can actually recover from this.
We appreciate your thoughts on the matter. Discussions happening off screen as well. Ntebo, I mean, Dr. Vilakazi made an important point with regards to how it all boils down to the electorate. And you heard what some of the people had to say. These political moves are interesting for us journalists, interesting for commentators. It's juicy, right? But I wonder, given the history and the turnout of the last elections, how these things play out in real time among the electorate.
Well, I think Dr. Vilakazi said something very much remarkable, Blaine. If you look at, I would say, the past 30 years of democracy, from 1994, the electoral support or the electoral turnout, the voter turnout has been on the upswing. But at some point around 2009, we started to decline. And it has been on a spiral, a downward spiral since 2009. But this is because, Blaine, people have lost interest and trust in the political system. You would recall that, we've got around over 40 million South Africans who are eligible to vote in South Africa. But we are told 23 million of them didn't participate in these elections. That on its own tells you that South Africans feel that they didn't derive anything from the past 30 years of democracy, some of them. And they even, and when we talk about this thing, Blaine, we're not advocating for a change of the mode of state, like we move from democracy to socialism. It's all about what are people deriving from this democracy. And I think Dr. Vilakazi hit on the nail.
Sam?
One thing as South Africans that we must be cognizant about and be frank and honest and internalize. In politics, there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies. There are just permanent interests. And we as South Africans, we shuffle the cards. Once we've shuffled the cards by voting, it is the political personalities that play the cards for themselves.
Right.
We are just pawns in a bigger scheme. And the truth of the matter, South African politics is not of a developmental state. It is of personal interests. For instance, there is no successive policy formulation from one administration to the other. There is disjuncture. The separation of party and state, lines are blurred. We don't know where we are at times. And those lines are not only blurred by the ANC, by the way. They're also blurred by all political formations that are there. And once these parties that have been outside of the system taste power, they never want to relinquish it. For instance, you go to a Western Cape, you go to Kailicha, you go to Guguletu. It's deplorable to stay there.
Yeah.
You are like a subhuman. But if you go to Hout Bay, you go to Camps Bay, you go to the suburbs, you go to First Naya, it is lavish. You come to Gauteng, run by the ANC, just opposite Africa's richest square kilometer mile, Sandton, there's Alexandra, where Lebogang Maile comes from, where the Deputy President comes from, where Zanele Mbeki comes from. But the situation is deplorable. You go to Nkandla, former President Zuma's homestead. Just next door, there was someone living in an informal settlement where the EFF had to go and build a house that eventually broke down.
I wonder, Mawande, how do we get past this then? I'll come back to you. Let me just get Sandile Swana's thoughts on this. How do we move past these moves, or how do we make these moves count in affecting positive change among the electorate?
There is no quick solutions to this, because the issues that have been raised, starting with the issues raised by Dr. Vilakazi, is that the caliber of the average politician in South Africa right now, the average public representative, is someone who is morally very flexible and not even committed to any particular policy. So the quality of these people is very low. So that needs to be corrected. So, with these new shifts that are happening and these new challenges, some of these parties, for instance, the ANC has suffered severe losses. But what will happen from what, because I interact with government officials, municipalities and all that, they are continuing with misconduct. And my view is that they are going to lose more and more power. Certainly, the electorate is punishing them. People are boycotting the elections. So there needs to be a new type of politician that emerges and a new type of leader, continuing with the democracy, because the danger of what we are doing now, we could find ourselves with a dictator who then says is going to solve this whole thing.
Right.
So it's not going to be easy, but the caliber is a big problem.
Let's get final thoughts, Mawande.
Yes. Look, you know, Blaine, I wanted to bring a new dimension to this talk of self-interest. Self-interest drives us all. That's why me and you and everyone are here. We're here so that we can get paid and live.
Right.
So politics is the same. So I don't want us to delegitimize the political beliefs and political standing of Floyd Shivambu, despite his alleged extramural activities at VBS.
Legitimize the politics of the stomach.
No. I'm saying politics of the stomachs will always be there. But it does.
Ngonyama said we don't struggle to be poor.
Of course. And
so you agree with him?
No, of course. You don't want struggle to be poor. And also because we must all survive at the end of the day. South Africa, we know we have skewed economic, powers between the blacks and the whites. So I'm saying the beliefs that Floyd Shivambu has of emancipating black people from the doldrums of the economic strata should not be delegitimized because of his alleged personal interest and extramural activities at VBS and municipalities. I think he firmly believes where he stands, that to change society in the manner in which he conceptualizes through socialism and communism, that MK for him is the next available platform after the platform he had been with for 10 years, which is the EFF, didn't seem to move far with that particular agenda.
30 seconds, last word to you, Ntebo.
You see, Blaine, I think as we're watching this political theater, one thing that needs to happen in South Africa, I think we should invite politicians, just for a moment, to walk a mile on the shoes of ordinary South Africans. Look, in the past 30 years, we've been having a number of macroeconomic policies introduced by the governing party. But did they really tinker with the problems that South Africans are faced with? That's number one. And I'm saying, for as long as we're sitting here today and we say, in South Africa, I think we are rudely reminded that the race matter. If we can sit here today and say, if you look around, the face of poverty is black people who are living in the informal settlements and elsewhere. For as long as we're not impacting on the conditions that they are living on, then we might as well forget.
Thank you very much.
And that on its own will impact into elections going forward.
The conversation no doubt continue. I'm told to be wrapping up now, but thank you very much indeed for your insights, your perspective. Dr. Swana, I mean, I'm calling you doctor, maybe it's prophetic. Sandile Swana, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate your insights as well. All right, before we go, here's my take. Look, Floyd's resignation from the EFF has given us pause, right? No doubt it's a headline-grabbing moment in history. So how do you fit in all of this? We mustn't lose sight of the end game. In chess, it's the phase of the game that occurs after most of the pieces have been exchanged. Then what? How will individual political decisions affect you and your family? Because that's what it boils down to, as you heard. Politicians trying to shape society so that society can benefit from the decisions they make. That's the hope. Julius Malema said, organizations must live beyond individuals, the understanding being that these political organizations should live and work for you, the voter. Parties exist to win. Why? Because they want to make a difference. Now, whether the difference is good or bad is really up to them, but we as voters allow them to either prove us right or prove us wrong. How will these political moves move you and your family forward? For me, the bigger picture tends to matter more than a snapshot in history. And that's my take. If you miss anything on this program, be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on YouTube. Democracy 30 up next with Oliver Dixon. If you're watching a repeat of this program, then as always, the news continues. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.